Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and Deutsche Bank is in trouble again, and going into
No
this...
way.
I know, right? Going into the Zero Hedge article, Deutsche Bank trading revenue plunges 30%, the CEO's time running out. And as the article goes into, Deutsche Bank's Q3 2017 revenues were 6.78 billion euros, below market expectations of 6.88 billion euros. The share price fell 2.7% shortly after the European market opened. The problem, like the previous quarter, was a bigger than expected drop in trading revenues. Trading revenue was down 30% year on year to 1.512 billion euros versus 2.162 billion euros in the second quarter of 2017. The challenge for the embattled CEO, John Cryan, is that the trend is still deteriorating. Trading revenues in the second quarter of 2017 fell 18% year on year to 1.666 billion euros versus 2.027 billion euros. Earlier this year, Cryan pledged to turn around the performance of the investment bank as soon as this year. And then just dropping down in the article slightly, the countdown to Cryan's replacement is ticking ever louder. And I quote, "These aren't the kind of numbers you want to keep seeing," said Marcus Russelman, an analyst at Independent Research in Frankfurt, who has a buy reco on the bank. The longer this goes on, the harder it gets to believe management's hopes for a recovery. We cannot see another 2 or 3 quarters like this. So obviously, like usual, Deutsche Bank is destructive. It's crumbling. It's crumbling at the seams. And, we talked about Deutsche Bank as early as like January, February of 2016, where we talked about at that time, $75 trillion derivative exposure. Now, of course, Deutsche Bank is all tied up in the derivatives market. We've been seeing history repeat itself over and over again, becoming very eerily reminiscent of 2007, 2008. And, of course, Deutsche Bank has been involved in a lot of manipulation schemes. They've gone to court over manipulating gold and silver. Found red-handed guilty alongside other banks like HSBC and BNP Paribas, and the list goes on and on. Let's just say Deutsche Bank is usually up to no good, and it's no surprise to see them suffering a bit. But John, can you go into what's going on here?
Yeah, well, we saw back in 2016 when the cocoa bonds that they held started to really crumble, and their credit default swap rating just went through the roof to about 232. Now it's down to about 80, 90. It's hovering around there, which is still quite high, but they were on the verge of bankruptcy back then. Now, what you got to understand with banks like Deutsche Bank in Germany is that Deutsche Bank, they are being used from the ECB to do the bailout for the ECB to countries like Greece, Spain, Italy, and others. So they have a lot of terrible, terrible debt that is completely, bankrupt.
Absolutely.
And as they have it, the ECB's balance sheet has gone up, drastically, and they've been, constantly bailing out by pushing in new money into and trying to keep these banks like Deutsche Bank liquid in order to survive on prolonged basis, because they're so over leveraged. They have so many derivatives on their books, and people are starting to see that these banks, that Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all these major banks, are they really as safe and secure as people believe them to be?
Yeah.
We are going to see...
The answer is no.
Yeah, we're going to see during the next crises, these banks like Deutsche Bank, Banco Popular, BNP Paribas,
HSBC,
ABN AMRO, like there's
Scotia
a whole
Bank,
bunch of, I'm talking about the European banks right now. And then, of course, the
the global banks in general.
Yeah, HSBC, wherever they are, the big major banks are going to struggle. And who knows what's going to happen after the big collapse that happens. Are they going to, continue to merge into one, like, massive, big global bank? You saw JP Morgan bought Chase. So you saw all these massive, mergers after the crises where one bank bought up bankrupt bank, and then they took over whatever was left of assets in that bank. these banks are up to no good again. And as you see here, during a period where stock markets have been going up mostly, they are losing money.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of buildup of pressure, especially in the stock market and in the monetary system worldwide, which we talk about all the time. But I mean, just going into the manipulation of this banking system. So Deutsche Bank, I mean, the way that they've been caught up in the past with, and in the future as well, I'm sure, credit default swaps, the collateralized debt obligations, mortgage-backed securities, their manipulation with the ETFs and all that kind of garbage. And it's continuing to build up and build up pressure. And I know that it had to take a lot of manipulation to keep Deutsche Bank on its legs this long. But John, why do you think Deutsche Bank is still standing after so many examples of, like, they should have fallen a long time ago? Like, looking at the fundamentals, they should have come crashing down a long time ago. But we both know that the fundamentals aren't on the table anymore, and this is so much due to the level of manipulation. Can you go into that?
Germany wants to keep the biggest bank that they have safe. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to keep that bank safe, and that's why they're constantly bailing Deutsche Bank out when it has all these terrible assets. But it's also using Deutsche Bank as its major bailout fund to borrow money to the bankrupt Greece and other southern European countries that are really struggling. So this is just the Germans wanting to make sure that their major bank is not going to topple on itself and fall apart. Now we've seen there's other banks, of course, in like Commerzbank in Deutschland in Germany that also is struggling severely. So that's the two major banks there. And what's going to happen here is they're going to try to keep them alive as long as they can. They're going to continue the bailout scheme. Now, interestingly enough, there was just an article coming out yesterday, I believe, where the ECB says that they're going to print less quantitative easing, so they're going to buy less bonds from countries like Germany and other countries around in Europe. So who knows what's gonna
put the pressure somewhere else.
Yeah, it's just what they're probably doing is just passing it to Japan or to the Federal Reserve or to Bank of Canada, any other banks.
Can you imagine all just the Bank of Canada?
Yeah. Well, as we did in our one report on the bank balance sheets, we saw just a massive amounts of accumulation, 370% worldwide since 2008. That they've accumulated and bought up and bailed out the global economy, which is insane. Like, their balance sheet was almost the same as the total global GDP in 2016. So it's just gotten to a point where they're just going to continue to perpetuate and bail out this bank until this bank is bankrupt, first of all, but they're going to continue to just prop it up by printing this fake money and giving them more and more money as they have more and more assets that they need to show off their balance sheet and hide.
Absolutely. And of course, by fake money, for those that are just tuning in to WAM for the first time, of course, we're talking about fiat currency printed out of thin air into oblivion. All fiat currency eventually reverts to its intrinsic value of zero. Always has, always will. Over the last 1,000 years, going back to 1024 AD in China, as we often go into. And a populace in debt is a populace in servitude. So the government and the banking system love it when people are in debt, because it pushes them down a bottomless pit of debt, and it forces them to ask for a ladder up from the government or the banking system, which puts them in perfect servitude to both systems. So with that said, obviously we've seen a massive repatriation of gold in Germany from the Fed. I think it was the second largest in history or something along those lines. And obviously
Germany has almost repatriated all of its gold.
Yeah, and
back to Frankfurt.
It seems like there is a massive shift in power going out to that side of the pond, to say the least. And we're seeing that similar stuff happening in Russia, China. It goes for all of that whole continent and that area of the world. It seems like, the Americas are kind of getting drained dry, and it looks like this system is kind of, the shift is really going towards the most totalitarian controlled places in the world to take lead in this global order.
And we had stupid countries like Canada and Norway that have sold all of its gold. It's one of the few countries in the world that doesn't own one dime.
Don't forget Venezuela. Venezuela sold off their gold too.
They still have, Josh. They still have 160 tons left, but they sold. They used to have like 600 something, so they sold a massive amount. But there you see, like it's all the stupidity, and the selling of gold was a part of depressing the price of gold, because Canada had 1,000 tons of gold. I have it in my book, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World. I talk about and give you the actual historical scale of how much they had. I believe 1,042 tons at one point in time, and then they started to sell it off, and of course Bill Murneau, he just completely went full circle by getting rid of every single little gold left in the treasury here in Canada. So,
and we questioned him on that in May 2016, and he basically said that gold has no value. Yeah, basically, and I think it was a couple days after that he went to Bilderberg, which was also interesting.
When you say you love paper money, definitely it's a welcome ticket to Bilderberg if you're, of course, high up in politics or in any corporation.
Absolutely. There's a major power shift happening. The dollar will crash. Fundamentals are off the table due to the level of manipulation in the monetary system. So you can't put a date on it, but you know it's going to happen. So we just want to warn you folks.
And the euro.
And the global monetary system is basically going down. But with that said, we have to always mention it, because if we skip one report and don't mention it, we get attacked in the comments. So solutions are food, water, shelter, self-defense, so you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block.
Euros?
No, that's a good way to commit suicide. But there's also things like gold and silver assets, diversification with blockchain, like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, that which is decentralized. Very important stuff, folks. You have to understand the system in order to escape it. And with education comes action. With action comes actual change in this system, because you can't continuously, sit on your ass and wait for the government to do things for you.
And you feel better and safer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. You feel a lot safer when you actually have control over your life, and some bureaucrat or banker doesn't. I mean, that's where, people need to be overly prepared rather than underprepared for their own safety and for their family's safety, and also educate their friends as well. But with that said, thanks for going into this with us again, John. Just constant nonsense with Deutsche Bank. It never ends. So until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth.
Be the change.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized by the Anti-Defamation League on YouTube, as they flag all of our content as hate speech. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description in the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. You can also find me at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, as the dinosaur social media digs its own grave. You get paid in cryptocurrency, Steem that is, on steemit.com via the upvote of your posts. So I hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.